All right, I think I'm live. I took the advice of someone on the last stream. Instead of not knowing when I'm live, they said just put up an image to start with, and then you'll know when you're live, and then you can switch to yourself, which is exactly what I did. Excuse me. Excuse me. Jeez. Having a Fox News moment here. So I started like a minute early because I'm going to be taking the so I side with, and the link is in the description, has updated their I guess you'd call it like a voter quiz or an election quiz or something like that. They've updated it to reflect 2020 and most of the 2020 candidates that are running. So I'm going to be, the title of the stream is something like, who's the most progressive candidate of them all for 2020? And it's not exactly about that today, but it sort of is. I couldn't think of exactly what to call it, but I'm going to be taking that quiz. And I've said already a little bit about who I would be more likely to support based on the current candidates. And I figure what better thing to do than to take this quiz and see exactly where it all shakes out. So I'm going to get to that in a moment. The link is in the stream description. So what I would suggest, you could do this if you want, or you don't have to, take the test along with me. And then after we're done, I don't know, maybe super chat me your results and we'll see who is in the, what type of people are in the live stream audience today. Okay, so we'll get to that momentarily. If this is your first YouTube channel live stream that with me, I'm guessing you've seen YouTube live at some point before in your life. It's really live unless it's a replay. These are not like the video clips that we upload. This is actually me talking to you now live, unless this is a replay. You can use Super Chat to ask questions and to send comments, and I now have the ability to put those up on the screen, which is cool. So if you sign up for a YouTube membership, that will pop up. If you send a super chat, that will also pop up. So that's cool. Send those and I will get to those. Sign up for membership, 2 different coupon codes in the description. You will get a live thank you from me. And I will open the phones if we get 10 new members. And sometimes people get mad. They say, David, why are you holding the phone lines hostage? Why are you only opening the phone lines during the live stream if you get some number of new members? The reason is it costs money to take phone calls. So we actually have a system which allows us to have, I think it's up to 1 or 200 people simultaneously holding, but we pay for per minute per person on hold. So when we often have during these streams 40 or 50 people who are holding, for 10 minutes, that's 500 minutes. So right when I get this gift every time we're done with a live stream, where as soon as I'm done and I shut the phone system off, I get an email saying your account has been recharged with a charge on our credit card for however many people have called in and talked to me. So that's why, okay? I will open the phone lines after taking the quiz. If we get 10 new members, it's cheap. There's discount codes in the description. Please don't troll the live chat. And we also now are part of a YouTube beta program called Channel Membership. You can use the join button. And when you do that, your name will also pop up here, just like Frank Fisher and Frank Abel and Stage Maker and Mr. Fred Ag or Fred AG, all of whom are now David Pakman Show YouTube channel members. So I'm going to get into this voter guide momentarily. I think it's important to mention a couple of things. I don't think this will be that notable in terms of the results unless there is like a huge difference for me with one candidate versus the other. So like if I take this and it says 77% Bernie and 76% Elizabeth Warren and 75% Tulsi Gabbard, I don't know that that's hugely significant in the sense that when you choose answers here, as you'll see, it asks you how important is this to you? And I'm making my best guess. If I mark something as more versus most important, that could be the difference between 1% more for one candidate or another. So what I'm going to be looking for is, are my politics significantly more aligned with one of the presidential candidates than the others? A couple points difference, I don't think will be that interesting. The other thing that I think is important to mention here is that the way this is done draws on a combination of voting records for people who are already elected officials, campaign platform, public statements. And so we have to kind of realize that with someone like Julian Castro, for example, the way in which a website like this assesses where he is based on different information than, for example, someone like Elizabeth Warren, who's been in the Senate for a while now, or someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who has been in the House of Representatives. So that's the other thing. There may be these are approximations. Okay, so what I'm looking for here is, do I come out drastically more for one candidate than for another? So maybe I should just get started. I don't know if people are ready. I'm seeing a lot of chatting going on. No super chats yet. So maybe I will just get into it, and then we'll see what other kind of trouble we get up to during the live stream. So let's just start. And again, my recommendation is do this along with me. Link is in the description, and super chat me your results when we're done. First question. Should the president be able to authorize military force against al-Qaeda without congressional approval? That's a pretty clear no for me. I mean, I'll look at the other stances. It's like an even stronger yes. No, Congress should approve all military conflicts. What's the difference between no and no, Congress should approve all military conflicts? I guess the question is Al-Qaeda versus all military conflicts. I'm just going to leave it as a no, and I will rank this as this is a more important issue to me. Should the United States assassinate suspected terrorists in foreign countries? Yes or no? Yes, but only if there's undeniable evidence they're planning to attack our country. That's complex because undeniable according to who? Yes, but only if there's undeniable evidence that they have committed an attack against our country. No, they should be captured and given a fair trial. I don't know about the legality of that. No, capture, interrogate, and imprison them instead. Do we have jurisdiction? This is a complicated one because in principle, I believe the United States should not assassinate suspected terrorists in foreign countries in the way that this entire program of extraordinary rendition has functioned. At the same time, that's sort of like what war is, and I do recognize that if a country is attacked by another country, that they, even according to the Geneva Convention, they are allowed to retaliate. So is a hard no my position when you consider, I mean, assassination is different than a declaration of war. I think I'm going to keep it simple and go with a no, but leave it as somewhat important based on the wording. Social issues. What is your stance on abortion? I am pro-choice, and I consider this a more important issue. Should the government continue to fund Planned Parenthood? Absolutely. Let's see what else is said here. As long as funding is not for abortion procedures. No, I don't agree with that. Yes, services reach beyond abortions. Well, that's true, but I don't know that I need to go into detail. The no's don't make sense to me. So I'm just going to say yes. And this is somewhat makes it seem like I don't care about Planned Parenthood, but I think in total, this is not on like my top 5 political issues. So I'll say somewhat. Do you support the legalization of same-sex marriage? Of course I do. It's been legalized. So I guess I'll just mark this as somewhat important. Environmental issues. Should the government increase environmental regulations to prevent climate change? It's a yes for me. Yes, and provide incentives for alternative energy production. I think this is a stronger yes than simply yes. Yes, and we should be incentivizing. And I think that this is one of the most important issues right now. If we're underwater due to climate change, if you can't breathe out in public because of climate change, it's going to be hard to be an activist for any issue. Should the U.S. withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement? No. So I'm going to put no. And this is, I mean, climate is one of the most important issues. The Paris Climate Agreement itself is a second tier issue relative to the big picture of climate. So I think I would still call it most because it's just a major issue right now. Should the government give tax credits and subsidies to the wind power industry? Yes. Yes, wind power is the best alternative to coal and natural gas. Yes, the government should support more sustainable energy technologies. I'm just going to go with the yes, and this is a very important issue to me. Okay. Economic issues. Should the government make cuts to public spending in order to reduce the national debt? No, not for that reason. Yes and no. Yes, and increase taxes. Yes, and eliminate federal agencies that are unconstitutional. Give me a break. Yes, but by drastically reducing benefits and salaries of government officials. No, reduce military spending instead. See, the problem with this question is that it assumes that merely for the sake of it, reducing the national debt is an important thing. And we've talked about how there is a lot of nonsense surrounding debt and deficit, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So uh, I'm trying to sort of infer what's implied by my answer here. I mean, I guess the answer is no. I don't think public spending should be cut merely to reduce the national debt. Um, and I do think that we should reduce military spending, but not instead. So I think with the word instead, all of these insteads, I think I'm going to not get involved in and just put this as a somewhat, maybe it's even a more important issue. Should the U.S. raise taxes on the rich? Yes, no, yes, and raise taxes on all income brackets. Reform to a flat tax. That's a no. No, but lower taxes for the poor. No, keep the current tax structure. Lower the income tax rate and remove all loopholes for large corporations. Abolish the income tax. That's a no. Okay, so huh. In general, I'm a yes person on this. I think that we should raise taxes on the very rich. The problem I have is I actually don't think raising taxes is completely necessary if we were to reorganize our spending priorities with the tax revenue that we already collect, and if we were to lift the cap on Social Security contributions above 121 or 123,000, wherever it is right now. So I'm not a no person. Under many circumstances, I would raise taxes on the rich. Um, but at the same time, I feel like we could keep the current tax structure and actually fix the problems we have if we stopped the defense spending to the extent that we do it and military. So I'm sort of unsure how to. Maybe I don't need to overthink it. Should the US raise taxes on the rich? I think that there should be a higher tax bracket that exists. So I'll just make it a yes, but mark it somewhat important. Should businesses be required to provide paid leave for full time employees during the birth of a child or sick family member? My instinct is yes, but I wonder. Yes, but only for companies with over 100 employees. I think 100 is too high of a threshold, but I do think there should be some threshold. If you think of a mom and pop with 3 employees or something like that, they are going to need to hire someone else if an employee is away for months for maternity leave, and they could literally go out of business by having to pay for both the employee that's not working and someone that they hire. But 100 employees is just way too high of a threshold. It should probably be more like half that, or maybe even a little less. Um, I guess I'm going to put, I mean, I guess I'll put yes, but for companies with 100 employees, knowing that that's not the right threshold for me, but just a flat yes is also not the right thing for me. And I'll mark it as somewhat important. Should internet service providers be allowed to speed up access to popular websites that pay higher rates? So it's a net neutrality question. It's a definite no. Um, and I would simply say it's a flat no. And for me, this is one of the most important issues. As I said before, the way most of us learn about what's going on in the world and know about which issues we want to activate around is because of media coverage, which is directly impacted by net neutrality. So that's a no. Should there be more restrictions on the current process of purchasing a gun? Yes. Yes, and ban all guns for public use. Can't do that. Yes, but only by closing the gun show loophole. Nope, background checks are needed. Yes, requires strict background checks, psychological testing, and training. So am I a flat yes or a yes in these ways? I guess I'm a yes in these particular ways, and this is a more important issue to me. Should teachers be allowed to carry guns at schools? So I don't believe that teachers should be armed as a matter of policy. However, I do think that the law in some places would dictate that if you're licensed, that you can't be, of course, if the school is designated a gun-free zone, then this doesn't apply. But if it's not the case, can the school as a policy? I'm just going to say teachers should not be allowed to carry guns at school, period. I mean, I think that that's the simplest way here. Should health insurers be allowed to deny coverage to individuals with a pre-existing condition? No, and this is one of the most important issues. If you're not healthy, if you don't have access to care, doesn't matter whether education or abortion or space travel is most important to you. Hard to be an activist if you don't have access to health care. Should the government increase funding for mental health research and treatment? Yes. Now, there's this option, yes, but only increase funding for personalized care instead of subsidizing pharmaceutical companies. Well, I don't think that that's a sort of a false dichotomy. I'm going to go with yes, and I think that this is a more important issue. Should the government regulate the prices of life-saving drugs? Yes, and we should socialize medicine and healthcare. Most important issue. Absolutely. Do I support increasing taxes for the rich in order to reduce interest rates for student loans? Um, no. I mean, I don't support doing it for that reason. And the interest rates on student loans are actually not even in the top, certainly not the top three, maybe not even the top five problems with the education system. No, but we should still reduce interest rates. I just think, as asked, no, I don't think that that's why we should raise taxes. Do I support Common Core national standards? I don't. Actually, I think the most applicable is no. My state's current standards exceed the Common Core standards, and I think maybe make more sense as well. I'm just going to leave this as somewhat important. Do I support charter schools? You know, I do conditionally. Let's see if we have. Yes, but not at the expense of funding public schools. I have studied this issue quite a bit, and I am of the mindset that charter schools in and of themselves are not the problem. And actually, the existence of charter schools can provide really interesting and valuable opportunities for students who learn in other ways or have other areas of interest. But the Republican way of pushing them, which is to decimate funding for public schools, is absolutely and completely unacceptable. So definitely, I think it cannot be at the expense of funding public schools. And maybe that's a more important issue. Should the U.S. remain in the United Nations? Yes. I can't think of anything here that would apply more. Yes, but scale back. Yes, and use the peacekeeping forces to protect our interests. No. So I'm going to say yes. I think that this is a more important issue. Should every 18-year-old citizen be required to provide at least 1 year of military service? It's a no. No, service should be a choice instead of an obligation. I'm comfortable with just no. Should the U.S. accept refugees from Syria? In principle, yes. I don't think Syria should be singled out. Yes. Yes, we should accept 10,000. I don't know. That number is not, I don't know why that would be the number. Yes, but only accept families, no single Muslim men. Yes, but we should accept much more than 10,000. I'm not sure on the number. Yes, but only after extensive background checks and monitoring to ensure they have no terrorist connections. I mean, yeah, that I agree with that, but we do vetting already, regardless of where they're from. So I'm going to say yes and mark it kind of in the middle. Should police officers be required to wear body cameras? I'm in favor of that. Should convicted criminals have the right to vote? They should. Yes, except for felons convicted of murder or violent crimes. Yes, but only after completing their sentences and parole probation. So my instinct is to just say yes on this. I've heard some relatively compelling arguments that once you that it should be once you've completed your sentence, but I just think I'm a yes on that issue. Should prisons ban the use of solitary confinement for juveniles? Yes. Should a photo ID be required to vote? Yes. Yes, this will prevent voter fraud. No, and there's little evidence that voter fraud exists. No, and automatically register every citizen to vote when they're 18. No, this will disadvantage those who do not have the resources to obtain one. All three of these provisions apply. Little evidence that it exists. We should do automatic registration, and it will disadvantage people who can't afford, even if the photo ID is free. Very often the documents you need in order to get the ID are not. So I think I'm just a hard no, and this is a very important issue. Should the Electoral College be abolished? Yes, and switch to a ranked voting system, I think is where I am. No reform. Yeah, I'm going to go with yes, and it's a more important issue. Should foreigners residing in the U.S. have the right to vote? Yes or no? Yes, but only after 5 years. Yes, but only after 10 years. Anyone who pays taxes should have the right to vote. Yes, but not in local elections. Yes, but only in local elections. No, only legal citizens should be allowed to vote. I'm actually unsure about this one. Again, it's one of these where my immediate reaction is voting is for citizens. But then there are really good reasons to let people who live here on a permanent basis vote, even if they're not citizens. So I think for today, I'm going to go with yes in local elections and mark it somewhat important. And I'm sort of open to having my mind being pushed even further on this. Should the government increase spending on public transit? Yes, yes, and provide more free public transit. Yes, but only towards environmentally friendly solutions. All of these are good options. I think I'm just going to say yes and mark it more important. Should the U.S. build a wall along the southern border? The answer is no, but let's see what else is here. No, too costly and ineffective. No, we should adopt open borders. No, but increase the military presence. I'm just a no. Should children of illegal immigrants be granted legal citizenship? I think yes. Yes, if they were born here. Well, no, that's the whole point. Yes, and abolish borders. No. Yes, but don't grant parents citizenship. Yes, but after 4 years of military service or college. I'm going to say yes, and I think that this is a see. It is a more important issue, but in the grand scheme of things, it relates to a small portion of the population, which doesn't mean it's unimportant. But I think in this context, I'll mark it as somewhat. Should immigrants be deported if they commit a serious crime? Does that mean legal immigrants? Yes, no. Yes, after they finish their sentence. Yes, as long as it's safe for them to return. No, only if they have entered the country illegally. Yeah, absolutely. Committing a crime, if you're here legally, should not jeopardize that immigration status. Should the government require children to be vaccinated for preventable diseases? I think that if they have to go to public school, no, but require vaccination to attend public school. No, fund public ad campaigns about the risks and benefits instead. I mean, I would support that. No, but hold parents criminally liable for transferring deadly diseases to other children. That's extraordinarily dicey. I'm going to say no, but require vaccination. Should producers be required to label genetically engineered foods? The thing about this is, I think this is my view right here. We have selectively bred crops for thousands of years, and labeling adds an unfounded stigma to the science. I know that there are people in my audience who don't agree with me on this, but I have studied this issue for a long time and interviewed some of the top experts on it. And I have found no evidence that GMO food on the basis of being GMO is actually unhealthy. And that while there are differences between the type of selective breeding that has been done for a long time and some of the new types of genetic modification, it's really the pesticides and herbicides that are problematic, and the ways in which some of these crops are particularly engineered by big agriculture can be problematic. But GMO in and of itself, I've still not seen any evidence, and that completely debunked rat study, by the way. Don't even mention that to me. So I actually am going to go with no on this, but I don't consider it to be a hugely important issue. Should the government fund space travel? Yes, yes, and drastically increase NASA's current budget, or just a yes? I think we should increase NASA's budget. There we go. Okay, so there are like additional questions that I can get to. Oh, well, the nuclear energy one is interesting. I would say I actually am okay with nuclear energy, but only as a bridge. Here is my position. Yes, temporarily, while we increase investment into cleaner, renewable alternatives. Let me see if there's any other additional questions that I might want to answer. Should Muslim immigrants be banned from entering the country until the government improves its ability to screen out potential terrorists? No, I don't think so. Should illegal immigrants have access to government subsidized health care? Yes, no, yes, if they pay taxes. Yes, and grant them citizenship. Yes, but deport them after treatment. Yes, but only for life-threatening emergencies. No, the kids. Oh man, this is so much more complex than this question purports to be. I mean, I think the answer is yes, because we figured out how it's so much more expensive to have emergency rooms used as primary care. So maybe I'll just say yes and mark it in the middle. Let's see what other extra questions there might be. More electoral questions. Should there be a limit to the amount of money a candidate can receive from a donor? Yes, there should. And that is a very important issue. Should foreign lobbyists be allowed to raise money for American elections? I think the answer is no, that we should keep American elections American to the extent that we can. Should the minimum voting age be lowered? I don't know. I think that it's okay where it is. Yes, and voters should pass a test. I would love that, but I think it would not be constitutional. Okay, that's probably enough electoral questions to get a pretty good sense. All right, let's leave it there and see where I am. I'm not going to answer that right now. All right, let's get to my results. It's tabulating my results, and we will see where this comes out. Okay, and before we show the results, let me mention again. I said at the beginning, we're taking the I side with political test. It's now been updated to reflect 2020 candidates. The way this is put together is from different sources for each candidate. So Richard Ojeda's positions are differently ascertained than someone like Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or whatever, because some people have been in the U.S. Senate, some members of Congress. Julian Castro was a mayor and HUD secretary. So in some senses, do we go with, how do you weigh the strength of Elizabeth Warren's foreign policy on the basis of her Senate votes versus Richard Ojeda's foreign policy merely on the basis of what he tells us because he's been a West Virginia state senator and doesn't really vote on foreign policy? I don't know the answer to that. So as I said before we get to my results here momentarily, I think that this will be interesting only if it shows like a drastic difference between one candidate and all of the others. But if they're very close, I think that it's not necessarily going to tell us that much. Okay, let's switch over and see what my results are. My 2020 presidential ballot. Based on your political beliefs, this is how you side with the potential candidates in the future 2020 presidential election. Andrew Yang, former guest on the David Pakman Show, 88% agreement with my policy. Number 2, Kirsten Gillibrand, who I've said has no shot. And number 3, Elizabeth Warren at 84%. Ojeda at 83%. That is very, very interesting. Kamala Harris, Julian Castro, Tulsi Gabbard, all at 82%. Joe Biden and Bernie at 81 and 80%. Beto, Oprah, Michelle Obama, John Delaney. Hey, I have more than 50% agreement with Mitt Romney. There's something interesting. Okay, and furthest away is Ben Shapiro and Ted Cruz. Oh, that is just the best. Okay, so this is very, very interesting. I should have Andrew Yang back on the program. Andrew Yang is running primarily as the UBI, Universal Basic Income candidate. And he, I mean, I would love to say that the guy has a shot, and I would quite frankly, with peace and love, talk to him about the fact that I think he has no shot. But I am not that surprised that when you include him, I agree with almost everything that he was telling us. Now, the only funny thing about this is it says socialism here. He's not a socialist. He's a sort of social democrat entrepreneur type. And that's sort of what I align with. But for whatever reason, based on my answers and the isidewith.com's assessment of his policies, it has us on the same page when it comes to socialism, which is sort of odd. So anyway, I think that this is not perfect, but I'm not really surprised about Andrew Yang or Elizabeth Warren. Kirsten Gillibrand here is a bit surprising, particularly when Keynesian is there for her and not for Elizabeth Warren. Ojeda at 83 is a little bit weird. And then all of these others are okay. They are what they are. So I think what we're kind of learning here is that a lot of these candidates so far on a plurality of issues are basically the same, and that the differences are coming down to a few percentage points, at least on the basis of this assessment. And what I take away from this is that my view that in the end, we have a lot of candidates, all of whom would be much better than what we have going on right now in the White House. I'm extra comfortable with that, given the results of this test. So start sending super chats. Let me know how you did on this. I will start getting to people's questions and comments, which we will put up on the screen now. Let me adjust that just a little bit. I will, as I mentioned, open up the phone lines if we get new patrons or members. I think I have let's see if I have the membership thing. So whenever we open up the phone lines, it costs us money because that's just how it works. And I would love it if we got 10 new patrons or members during the live stream. We have one so far, Ann Hanley. Ann Hanley has become a new patron at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. We have 2 coupon codes available for you. Okay. Go to davidpakman.com/membership, pick a monthly or yearly membership, drag the red slider wherever you want. And then on the second page, after hitting the sign up button, you'll notice where there's a coupon code field. Now, this coupon code that's on screen, Vote Soon 18, this is an old coupon code. Okay. We have much bigger and better things here that I will keep you abreast of. If you put in the coupon code, this is 2020, this is 2020, you will see that you can save 40% off of any membership. Okay. This makes a $6 a month membership a little over $3 a month. Most of our audience can afford that. If you can't, don't worry about it. I don't want you to support what we're doing. If $3.60 a month is affordable, please consider making a new membership on our website. If you want like the blockbuster deal of the year, select the $60 membership. Okay, so on the first part, move over to yearly from monthly and select the $60 membership. And then you can apply the coupon code 2019. That will drop a $60 membership to just $20.19. Okay, we've had over 400 new members sign up in January so far using that coupon code. And it's going away. It's going away very soon, certainly before my birthday, because we'll probably do some kind of birthday special. And we don't want 2 overlapping blockbuster membership specials. So check that out. And if we get just 9 more new members, I will open up the phone lines at 617-830-4750. Okay, let's see what we have going on in terms of super chats today. Kay sent a $5 super chat. And she says, I work at a state government office giving SNAP and welfare benefits. It has been a horrible week seeing people cry when I tell them they may not eat. Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting what's going on, Kay. And this is now I don't even know if this is the longest shutdown ever or the longest shutdown in modern history, but it has gone far longer than even my friends in government who are under the Department of Homeland Security who aren't getting paid expected this to go. And when you consider, I mean, listen, let's forget for a second about the people who are going hungry, because that's one level, and that is inconceivable in this country. Even aside from that, I believe it's 78% of Americans are under what we would call, generally speaking, a paycheck to paycheck situation, meaning that any kind of significant unexpected expense or interruption of their source of income very quickly becomes an emergency, right? There was a study that we talked about maybe a year ago or something like that, which pointed out that I believe it was 40% of Americans, or no, I think it was 60% of Americans would be unable to deal with an unexpected $400 expense. So, I mean, I understand that this is mostly impacting government workers and those who receive benefits from certain programs, including food stamps. Just because it's not affecting most Americans doesn't mean it's not affecting some Americans in an extremely significant and acute way. And I genuinely, at this point, have no idea how long it's going to go on for. And, you know, as a progressive who is sympathetic and empathetic to people and what's going on in the world, on the one hand, I want government reopened as soon as possible, period. At the same time, the recent proposal that Donald Trump made, where in exchange for roughly $1.6 billion plus 2,750 new border agents and law enforcement, plus 75 new judge teams, and a $5.7 billion for the wall, he would do 3 years of an extension on DACA and temporary protected status. That quite frankly is a bullshit proposal, right? He took that stuff away to begin with. He is the one who would suffer the political consequences from starting to deport the children of undocumented immigrants, so-called dreamers, DACA recipients. And Republicans, I think, know that that's not something they can do. The political consequences would be absolutely huge. And it's just such a bogus proposal that I don't think Democrats should accept it. But I do want government reopened as soon as possible. And I don't necessarily know how to parse that because it's an emergency for people, as you're pointing out, Kay. Mr. Bitches 0486, how much backlash will there be in the Democratic Party if a corporate-friendly Democrat wins the primary? Would it kill the progressive movement? No, it wouldn't kill the progressive movement, but it would be a disappointment. And, I think what's very important to remember, I mean, listen, let's go back to the results that we just got here. The difference for me between a candidate that I know I very much agree with, like Democrat Andrew Yang, Kirsten Gillibrand, I still have some questions about it. I don't know why she came up so high, but Elizabeth Warren. The difference between Yang and Warren and someone like Michelle Obama, for example, is the difference between 77 and 88 or 77 and 84%. We're on the same page on most issues. And I hate this phrase, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't know, but I think it sort of applies here. The opportunity to defeat Donald Trump, the opportunity to start righting some of the embarrassingly horrible wrongs that have surfaced as a result of the destruction of relationships with allies, pulling out of the Paris climate deal, all sorts of stuff. Starting to fix that as soon as possible is so much more important than are we 100%, 90%, or 80% in agreement with the winner of the Democratic primary. I'm not even a Democrat, right? I'm an independent who is progressive and just votes for whoever I assess to be most in line with my views. Neo McDoom with $1.99. It's the longest ever, David. Okay, so the current shutdown is indeed the longest ever. And at this point, I think we're into potentially week 5. So yeah, it's I don't know what the end date is even potentially going to be at this point, but it's bad, and I hope it gets opened. But Democrats should not cave. Okay. Nancy Pelosi's doing the right thing here. And I believe that as soon as maybe it's tomorrow that Mitch McConnell is going to bring up Donald Trump's proposal as a bill in the Senate, and we'll see what happens. But I do believe that the Democrats should reject it. Let me do a couple more thank yous here. We've got a couple new members who just signed up. Paul Lundquist is a new David Pakman Show member. And John Spano is a new David Pakman Show member. That is 3 new members during the live stream. I said at the top of the stream, I'm glad to open up the phone lines and take some phone calls if people want. But I would like to get 10 new members or patrons, okay? Patreon, for $1 a month, you can become one of those 10. It does cost us money when we take phone calls. The infrastructure we have that handles up to like 200 lines at once. Every time I take phone calls for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, costs us money. And that's why we're doing a membership challenge. We are 3/10 of the way there. 3 new members, looking for 10. Coupon codes are available. They're in the video description. Would love to take some phone calls, but if people aren't interested, if people don't want me to, I don't have to do it. It's not completely necessary. The other thing, by the way, which we could do, I don't know if people are interested, but I would consider taking a couple of challenges on leechess.org. I've played against people in the audience a couple of times. People are usually much better than me. I'm David Pakman on Leechess, and I would be up for playing a game or two if people wanted. But really, I'd mostly like to hear from people in the audience and see what's going on and how your I side with results went and all of that stuff. So we'll see what happens and what we get. Okay, let me take a look at what's going on in the general chat here and see what people are saying. Bernie would win in a landslide. I don't know that we know that, although I love Bernie and supported him in the primary in 2016. David gets owned in chess every time. I actually have won a couple of games on stream, but, I'm not that good. So having to explain my moves while I play makes me even worse. People saying that they would like to call in, but they don't know the number. Well, I would give the number. if we end up taking phone calls. Let's see what else. David, I'm a Muslim, socialist, reptilian, Illuminati. All right, well, good for you. David's a liberal. Trump 2020. Okay. The Progressive Voice is a Pakistani leftist, but he doesn't criticize Islam. What a failure and a hack. Oh, Progressive Voice is in the channel. Why is everybody going after Progressive Voice? David's not a socialist either, he said. That's true. I'm not. Why give the Progressive Voice a break? I don't know why people are attacking him. When is David's birthday? February 2nd. Biden's a robot. Biden always sucked. Biden is beyond bad. Is David an elitist coffee drinker? Yeah, I think so. First lady is not a qualification to be president. I guess that's in reference to Michelle Obama. Fair enough, but accomplished attorney, I think. Gillibrand and Harris. Oprah Winfrey will give everyone a free car. The test seems bad. David, you're a beta male. Progressive Voice is a joke. Man, Progressive Voice is just getting crushed here. David can curse. Yeah, I don't curse on the regular show because we are on 200 broadcast radio and television stations. And once we had a fleeting expletive leak, and we got emails from them pointing out that they could get in trouble for that. So we're not doing that anymore. Whoa, this is a name, says for $4.99. I wish I understood the significance of $4.99 versus $5. I don't know. Where do you stand on universal basic income? And in general, where do you think automation and AI will take our society? Okay, so I'm for UBI, although I've also mentioned that I would be, in principle, okay with a negative income tax as well. Different proposals. When I interviewed Andrew Yang, he had thoughts on why he believes UBI is better, although he's not against a negative income tax. So I'm in favor of UBI. Here's my answer to where do I think automation and AI will take society. Automation and AI are not going to be definitively good or necessarily bad for society. What's going to determine whether, in effect, automation and AI are good or bad for society is whether we're ready to have the difficult conversation, okay? The difficult conversation is we need to rethink the relationship of humans to work, okay? Difficult as a conversation because people are, because of their economic views, or we could call them socioeconomic views, often very, very attached to either capitalism, some form of it, or some other ideology. And the truth is that once you have significant automation doing more and more jobs, you just need to rethink that relationship. Like, should it be a requirement for people to work a full-time job in order to be able to support themselves? Or can automation sort of free us from that requirement and say, we recognize the value of all sorts of activity, even if it doesn't have a specific dollar value of economic benefit that you can attach to it. And Arthur C. Clarke has written a lot of science fiction that sort of dances around this topic or even deals with it more directly. Childhood's End, which was turned into a series that was okay, but the book is fantastic, deals with that. And that's what's ultimately going to determine the impact of automation and AI on our society. Beans Martochia with a $5 super chat. Since food stamps are being affected, I think we want the other affected. Are Social Security recipients going to be affected? As far as I know, not in the immediate, but there is a way that in the long term, there could be an impact on Social Security benefits. I actually don't remember. I read a piece about it, but from what I remember, it was sort of far off. But I believe that there is a mechanism through which Social Security could be impacted by the shutdown, but I think it's significantly further off. Okay, let me say thanks to Jean-Luc Desroches, who is the newest David Pakman Show member, signing up at davidpakman.com/membership. Thank you, Jean-Luc. That is 4. We will open the phone lines if and when we get 10 new members or subscribers. Anne Hanley, who was a new patron earlier, has also now become a new David Pakman Show member. That makes 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 new members and patrons. We are looking for 10, and I will open the phone lines at 617-830-4750. Don't be shy. plenty of coupon codes available. 2 of them are in the video description. This is 2020. Will save you 40% off of the membership of your choice. 2019 will drop a $60 a year membership all the way down to $20.19. We're halfway there. The phone lines are ready to go. But we will hopefully get those 10 subscribers and then get those phone lines opened up. Okay, a couple things in the regular chat I wanted to mention. Someone says they will make a prank call if we open up the phone lines. I have been trolled 100 times on the phones. And if you think I'm scared of a prank call, I hate to break it to you, but I'm not, and I welcome it. Universal basic income is a Silicon Valley scam designed to prolong the pain of capitalism's death. I addressed that with Andrew Yang, actually, in our interview, and I would encourage you to check that out. What time is the normal show to call? Okay, so our normal call time is Wednesdays at 1:15 p.m. Eastern U.S. time. We will be taking calls tomorrow at that time. David, you should watch Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, I still don't know what that is. Terrible picture of you, David. Oh, I guess people mean, wait, which picture is it? This picture here. I don't know that it's that bad. I mean, something very, very strange was happening with my hair on this day. I remember when this picture was taken. It's also a 30-year-old picture, which is crazy. Imagine that. But I don't think it's the worst picture in the world. Hey, David, do you think Bernie will run? I think he will. David, you're holding us hostage by requiring new memberships in order to open the phone lines. Come on, I've already addressed that. That's bogus. Tulsi has a bad track record. Don't be an affected snob. Tulsi is not an Islamophobe. Dave, why do people believe Trump's lies? Well, we've talked about that. Cognitive dissonance is a big part of it. Hey, David, just saw an ad. Good to see ads are coming back for the Pacman channel. Yeah, you know, I haven't done this in a live stream like for over a year, but there's this button called play ad. I'm just going to hit it and see what happens. Okay. Tell me if you're getting an ad. It says your stream isn't currently live. That doesn't make sense. We're live right now. How can I can't play an ad because the stream is not live? Oh, okay. Now it says that it is showing ads. Interesting. Yeah, I've never really done that before. Okay. Anyway, let me say thanks to a 6th new member, Rex Woodham. Rex Woodham, yeah. 6 out of 10. All right. So if we want to open the phone lines, we are just 4 new members or patrons away. And then I will go ahead and get those phone lines open. We had, last time we did this, I was able to take, I think it was like close to 20 phone calls or something like that. Maybe I'm misremembering, but it was a very, very big phone call day. But if people don't want that, then we don't. Oh, okay. We've got a 7th new member, Ross Hernandez. 7th new member, Ross Hernandez. 3 more. We can do 3 more members. Let's just do it and get these phone lines opened, right? Why not? I feel like that there is demand for this. Let me tell you what's on tomorrow's program, just while we're hanging here, in case people are interested. Let me pull up my stories. I've been working very, very intensely on tomorrow's program. Let me pull it up here. Tomorrow is the 23rd. Okay. So on the program tomorrow, we will talk about the new claim, I guess we would call it, from 2 House Democrats that there is a plan to investigate Brett Kavanaugh for perjury. That would be very, very interesting. I would love to see what happens if there is an active House investigation into a sitting Supreme Court justice. So we will talk about that tomorrow, and I hope it happens. We will talk about what may be a coincidence or it may not be. After Donald Trump very haphazardly announced that the United States is leaving Syria, we started seeing Eric Prince, the former CEO of that mercenary firm Blackwater, and also happens to be the brother of Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos. Eric Prince started showing up on CNN, on Fox Business, and other places saying, you know what? We should bring our troops home, but we've got to protect the Kurds. So I have the solution. Let's send mercenaries from his own, I guess it's now been renamed, academy is the new name of the former mercenary firm Blackwater. Let's send them there. And this is yet another new layer. We talked about the possibility of Turkey and Saudi Arabia and the Khashoggi killing being related to Donald Trump's haphazard decision to leave Syria. We talked about the Russia Bashar al-Assad element as possibly connected to Trump's abrupt decision. And lo and behold, now we have a guy in Eric Prince who is connected to Donald Trump directly via, or almost directly, via Trump's cabinet and Betsy DeVos, his sister, and stands to make an insane amount of money from sending mercenaries to replace American military in Syria. And this is a Trump problem, Trump's corruption. This is also, bigger picture, a military industrial complex problem. We're going to be talking about that on tomorrow's program. Also, Donald Trump, we learned, walked out of a policy meeting with Paul Ryan a few months ago when Ryan was still in office to go and watch television. This is just an absurd, insane story where we've now heard from one of the former deputy White House communications directors. Trump, after about 15 minutes of Paul Ryan just explaining stuff to him, got up and went to watch TV in his private dining room, and Mike Pence had to go and get Trump and bring him back. And this is the ADHD presidency. I don't know how else to say it. All of that and more on tomorrow's show. Okay, let's get to a couple of other super chats. Let me also thank Elijah Jones. Elijah Jones has signed up for a membership at davidpakman.com/membership. That's 8 new members and patrons during the stream. 2 more, and I will open the phone lines at 617-830-4750. Okay? I don't have all night to hang, but I will take some phone calls if we get 2 more members and get to 10 at www.joinpakman.com. Sabrina Zafar is a new YouTube member. That is another option that is on the table. Why don't we count that? Let's just count. I mean, that's a type of membership. Let's count Sabrina, which pushes us to 9 new members. And I don't know what that chime was related to. Maybe Sabrina's membership. So one more member at www.joinpakman.com, and that will call that 10, and I will open up the phone lines. Blackwave54 with a $9.99 super chat. What's with this transgender thing going on, and what can it affect? Gang. Yeah, so the Supreme Court has upheld the legality of Donald Trump's transgender military service member ban. And this is one that is, it's crazy to discriminate against transgender people, obviously. At the same time, I don't want anyone to have to be a tool of the U.S. military and the neocon, war hawk, political use of the military that we've seen by so many of our presidents. But you still shouldn't be able to single out transgender service members. And for the time being, the Supreme Court is saying that that is a policy that can go forward. Now, we still don't know what the implementation of it will be. Is the military going to start some kind of a seek and remove policy or idea with to figure out who is trans and to kick them out of the military? Will they be honorable or dishonorable discharges, which has a big impact on future job prospects? There's a bunch of obvious problems with the trans service member ban. We pointed them out in detail. Might have been a year and a half ago at this point when this policy was first announced by Donald Trump. And of course, the Pentagon at the time said, we're not doing anything differently for now. We don't know anything about this. So that's what's going on. It conceivably would allow some application of a ban on trans military service members, which would be extraordinarily stupid and also very, very bigoted. But I genuinely don't know how you implement it. You can say, well, anyone who has had transition surgery or other medical treatment paid by the military, I guess you could find some record of that and you could identify an initial group of people that way. But, okay, that doesn't apply to everybody. A lot of people don't do that. Are they actually going to start looking around for trans military service members? I have no idea, but it's an absolutely horrible and disgusting policy. D. Ken from UCLA with a $100 super chat, the biggest super chat of the evening. D. Ken, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. D. Ken says, can you explain the national debt? I keep hearing different figures from Dems and Republican leaders the last 3 years. What are the negative consequences of a high debt? Okay, very good questions. So when you say, can I explain it? The national debt is the cumulative amount of deficits and surpluses over the years. Okay, this is something a lot of people on the right don't understand. If let's say you start a country, okay, the first year you run a deficit of $100. After that year, that first year, you spent $100 more than you took in. You ran a $100 deficit. After a year, your running total debt is $100. I think that part everybody basically gets. Imagine that in year 2, you run a $100 deficit again. So in the second year that you are a country, you spend $100 more than you take in. That $100 deficit gets added onto the $100 debt that the country had at the beginning of that second year. Your debt is now $200. $100 was the deficit for that year, and your debt went up to $200. Now, imagine that in year 3, you run a $50 surplus. And here's where you can imagine how over the years, politicians can play games with this. Year 3, you start the year with $200 in national debt, and you run a $50 surplus. You now have reduced your debt from $200 to $150, presuming that the $50 surplus was actually used to pay down the debt, which is not a guarantee, minus interest. Okay, so I'm really simplifying here, but your $50 surplus doesn't eliminate the debt. It could potentially pay it down from $200 to $150. That's one way that politicians mess with this, which is by deliberately flipping between debt and deficit. And also, there's so many ways they can mess with it. But another one is talking about the rate of change in the growth or reduction of the deficit versus the absolute change. So you might have a president who comes in. Imagine that in the last 2 years, the previous president saw the deficit grow in 1 year by 20% and in the next year by 25%. You sometimes will have a new president come in and say, we've seen a reduction in deficit growth of 50%. You think, whoa, hold on a second. What a reduction in deficit growth, what does that mean? What that might mean is that the next president came in and experienced deficit growth of 12.5%. Okay. Remember, last year for the previous president, there was 25% deficit growth. By reducing the growth rate from 25% to 12.5%, you can now tout, I slowed down deficit growth by 50%. But what does that actually tell us? The debt still continues to grow. So these are just some of the ways, Deacon, that you can mess with that. Objectively speaking, you can't really just say these are the negative consequences of a high debt. Modern monetary theory and other economic theory increasingly is telling us that the Republican game of just saying debt is bad, period, is it's a ruse. What matters is, why did we go into debt? What was the debt used to pay for? And that's ultimately what determines the economic impact of it. Saridi Ahmed Yahia with a $10 super chat. Why do we as a secular nation support Israel's right for that land that it claims it has only for religious reasons because they're Jewish, and vice versa for any other religion? Well, what's important to remember is that there's a lot of propaganda around that issue, and the creation of the state of Israel was not on the basis of religion in and of itself, right? And in fact, the founders of the state of Israel were overwhelmingly non-religious Jewish socialists in many cases. So you'd have to ask someone who has that religious underpinning to defend that. I never have, because I'm not religious, and I believe Israel has a right to exist on a completely secular basis. Countries are created in 3 ways: acquiring land by war, annexation, which basically means, Annexation can mean purchase, or it can mean what Russia did in Crimea, or international decree. International decree is the method that was used to create the state of Israel from land that was at different points Jordanian and British. So, I think that there's a double standard applied where people can use either the relative recency of the creation of the state of Israel as a way to question its validity as a country, which is logically invalid, or they sometimes will use disagreements with foreign policy as a reason to question the existence of Israel. And of course, I don't know of other countries that people question on the basis of foreign policy disagreements. So I think there's a lot of double standards, and I don't think that a religious claim to the land is necessary or interesting, and I don't support one. Skit City 001 says, "Hey David, will you do any more constitutional originalist debates or economic policy debates?" Sure. I'm not a constitutional scholar, so I don't know that I'm the right person for a constitutional originalist debate, but I'm glad to do debates around economic policy for sure. If people want, depends, who it is that people want me to debate. And the thing about debates is a lot of times people want debates with issues that I'm either not proficient in or don't care about that much. And it's like debating for the sake of debating is not super interesting to me. Okay, we've gotten a few more new members, so let me open up the phone lines here, and then we can start taking. I don't have a crazy amount of time, but I'll take a few phone calls. The number is 617-830-4750 if people want to call in and start getting on hold, and then we will be able to take those calls. I'll give that a couple of minutes. I will thank Ethan Hicks and David Rouse or Roos, who has signed up, as well as, I think that's it. Yeah, those are the two new members. We have gotten over the 10 new member mark for the stream, so I'll take some calls like I promised. We'll see who is interested in talking to me today. Let's see here. Okay. Looks like a lot of people are interested in talking today. Let's go to, okay, I'm telling you right, Dante, we're not picking up on you today. Okay, Dante is very, very quick on the draw. You've called in a bunch of times. A lot of people get very angry when Dante gets on, so we're not picking up on Dante today. Let's go to the 610 area code. Caller from 610. What's going on?
David, is it me?
That is you, my friend.
Hi, this is Justin. I had a question just trying to take basically healthcare on a state level and that sort of aspect. I was thinking about basically funding it by declaring that health is part of defense, and basically asking for our proportion via per state. I mean, what would you think as to go that way, maybe to also get healthcare for all?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Are you just simply saying, what do I think about pushing for healthcare for all at the state level and going about it that way? Is that, or I'm not, I apologize. I don't think I fully understood your question.
Okay, yeah, well, I thought about this during the election and that sort of stuff. It was basically like, if we can't do it the one way, go via state and basically ask for a percentage of what is spent on defense per
You're
each
saying
state.
the state would ask the federal government for a percentage of
Yes.
defense spending to then at the state level make single payer happen.
Yes.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't think that would ever work. I don't know how you do that. I think that the idea of states doing single payer is a great one. I mean, in Massachusetts, we've been doing our own thing called Romney Care, on which Obamacare was heavily based for years. It's not single payer, but it's its own system. So I like the state level idea. You're not going to get federal government defense money for state level single payer, though.
Oh, just an idea. Basically go about that. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, yeah. I mean, I like that you're thinking about it. I just practically speaking don't think it would work. Okay, let's see. 502 area code. Caller from 502. Go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, David? My name's Scott. This is from Kentucky.
How you doing, Scott?
Not bad. I've been watching your show for a while. I watch a lot of pundits actually from all sides of the spectrum.
Cool.
I'm a bit of a radical centrist. So anyway, I was wondering if you thought this shutdown is maybe building up to something bigger, like a between border security and like full amnesty for the Dreamers. If you think that instead of this 5.7 billion for different sections of the wall, it's just they're gonna instead change it to like it's full 20 or 30 billion for all the security and border patrol and all of the wall coverage and drones and underground tunnel scanning, and in exchange for all of our dreamers get to live here in the land of the free, and we and easier immigration process for cheaper visas and such like that. You think that maybe we're building up to a more realistic compromise that would be better for everyone?
I've pointed out that I actually would be open to that. So I'm opposed to the wall and I'm opposed to 5.7 billion in exchange for temporary protected status and DACA protections for an additional 3 years. Trump took that away. Now he's trying to give it back, but saying it's good, but saying that even though it's good and he wants it, it's a negotiating point. It's crazy what's going on right now. But I would be up for something like 2 billion for Trump to feel like he won in exchange for permanent status for DACA recipients, because that actually would be a really good deal, particularly assuming that it was like some kind of system that wouldn't be reversible. Because of that 2 billion, 2 billion is an insane amount of money, but at a certain point you would say I would trade it for permanent status. So I think we could be building to that. Although the only risk is that any money at all is seen as such a victory by Trumpists, even though Trump said we were going to do the entire border and Mexico would pay for it. It's obviously never happening, but there's the propaganda value of it. But DACA, permanent status for DACA recipients would be such a big thing that I would be inclined to seriously consider an offer like that.
There's also like the El Chapo Act, that Ted Cruz put forward to talk about seizing, the ironically seizing, drug lords' money and into using it on border security and other such things. That would
Yeah, that one's going to be a
great.
little tougher to pull off, but I think we'll see what the next. If Democrats reject what's coming up in the Senate supposedly tomorrow, we'll see what the next iteration of the proposal is.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, it was great talking to you, buddy.
Okay, thanks.
Have a
Appreciate
good
the
one.
phone call. Thank you so much. Let's go to the 480 area code. Caller from 480. Go ahead.
Hey, David. It's Miles from Arizona, University of Arizona. But I wanted to discuss the MAGA Catholic high school kids incident. I'm well aware that there's a lot more than just the kids, but I was just wondering, like, to the kids alone, who do you think is to blame? Because my roommate and I were discussing it a little bit, and we think the fault lies on the parents, especially when you consider the fact that this is a rural Kentucky Catholic high school, deep Trump country. These parents probably are rabidly pro-Trump, and that pro-Trumpism just trickled down to the kids.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw my story yesterday about it, but there's a lot of blame to
No, I
go
did.
around here. Obviously, these are kids. These kids aren't 5, right? So they have some agency, and at this point, they are starting to sort of become their own people in the world. They're not yet adults, but they're also not little kids. The parents obviously are a huge part of the behavior. The chaperones, the fact that the school allowed a delegation to go to what was supposed to be, I guess, an anti-choice rally, a so-called pro-life rally, dressed like they're coming from a Trump rally. There's a lot of problems here. We also found out that the kids were heckling other people before, but the Black Israelites are a problem, and we now have more video which shows us that it appears to have been an option to go and get in the middle of that group of kids by the Native American protester. I mean, what I said yesterday was, I'm not ranking behavior. I'm not telling you every side is equal in this thing, but there's a lot of just toxic politics and misbehavior to go around here.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm aware. I mean, the whole thing, it definitely was a major mess. I guess on a little bit of a different note, if you have time, or no, or do you want to?
Miles, your connection's so bad and you're cutting in and out that I'm going to let you go, but I appreciate that question and I hope to hear from you again. Let's go to the 815 area code. Caller from 815. Go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, David? A big fan, been a member for a while.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My question is, I noticed some on the left, like Kyle Kalinske and Michael Brooks, they kind of brush the Russia stuff to the side. I notice you don't do that, but why do you think some on the left kind of, I don't want to say not taking it serious, but like I said, kind of brush it to the side, the Russia investigation?
You know, I can't say specifically with any one person, and I also, I'm going by what you're saying about Kyle Kalinske and Michael Brooks. I don't really watch almost anything, so I don't know what
Mm.
they've been saying, to be quite honest, but I think there's a couple different things going on. Excuse me. One is there are people on the left who feel as though the Russia story somehow props up Hillary Clinton's candidacy, and that might not make sense now 2 years out, but the idea is if Russia helped Trump win, then were it not for Russia, Hillary would have won. And we don't like the fact that Hillary might have won because we think Hillary is not as good as Bernie. Okay, so that's like one narrative. I'm not saying that applies to Kyle or Michael. I don't know what their arguments are.
Mm.
Others maybe are just of the mindset that it doesn't make sense to talk about it, that whatever it is that's going on with Russia, that there's policy things to talk about, and they just don't think it's important to talk about possible rampant criminality and collusion with a foreign country to seize the presidency. I would simply disagree in that case. And I would agree that there's lots of other things to talk about and we can do both at the same time. But I think you'd have to ask them. I mean, I'm not one of them, so I can't say what's in their mind.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, I appreciate the answer. Thanks, man.
All right, no problem. Appreciate the phone call. Let's see here. Let's go to Brody. Brody's holding on. We have a bunch of Brody callers, so I don't know which Brody this is.
David, it is the Brody from Dallas that you know. What's up, man?
What's going on, Brody?
Not much. Hey, so I wanted to actually tap your economic expertise because I'm curious. I've heard that Moody's has stated that there are a lot of economists who are concerned that there's going to be at least a recession or some type of slowdown within the next 18 months or so. And I wanted to know what you thought the impact of the government shutdown, if it continues for, say, another, God forbid, 4 weeks or something, will that have an impact on whether or not we're going to experience a harder economic slowdown? And do you see any kind of economic slowdown or economic issues coming as a result of that? And also, people check out the Discord link on Reddit as well.
The Discord link on Reddit. Okay, so here's the thing. There's like a bunch of layers to this. One is economists and their predictions are basically worth nothing. Okay, economists have been predicting a slowdown sometime in the next 1 to 6 years for like the last 8 years. Okay, so that's number one. And I don't, from a merely logical standpoint, you don't have just boom cycles forever. So at a certain point, there's going to be a pullback, and at a certain point, there's going to be a big enough one that we would call it a recession of some kind. The idea that now we can say with more certainty that it's in 18 months, we're a day closer to the next pullback than we were yesterday. That's what we can say. And I don't really pay much attention to these economists who say now it's an 18-month thing or 12 or 24-month. Government shutdown, if it goes on too long, it will start to affect the economy. It's not going to cause a recession when there wouldn't otherwise be one, but it could exacerbate it because you are talking about impacting the total amount of government spending, which is a factor in terms of demand side stimulus. And also there will be millions of people who will be impacted between federal government workers, associated contractors, and people who aren't going to be getting food stamps, for example, which are very economically stimulative. If airports get shut down, that will impact industry. So it'll have an effect, but it won't create a recession.
As far as airports getting shut down, can I sneak in one last question? Would you avoid international travel if you were me, or I guess or anybody? Like, would you avoid international travel between now and March, or like planning international travel?
Why? What's happening between now and March?
I mean, I guess would the shutdown continue? Like, would you?
Oh,
is the shutdown is that going to hinder international travel versus domestic travel?
I don't think so. I mean, if you're flying out from the U.S., you're going through TSA, no matter whether you're flying domestically or internationally. So I don't think it makes a difference.
Oh, all right, cool. Well, I love the show, man.
Okay, thanks, Brody. Great to hear from you. Let's see. Let's go to the 215 area code. Caller from 215. You're on the air.
Hello, is this me?
That is you.
All right. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say I'm a big fan of your show. Watching it has, made me politically awoke and active.
Good.
So I do have two quick questions. I'm going to try and get through them. So I know you just took the test about the candidates, and I just want to get your perspective on how would you rank them in your support of the candidates currently running and why.
So, I mean, as I've said before, I think Andrew Yang is awesome. We have to be sort of realistic that he's not at the same caliber in terms of electability as Elizabeth Warren, but I'm not trying to play electability games. I'm just trying to say who is the person I agree with the most from what we would call the central candidates right now. I think if the election were today, I would support Elizabeth Warren. That would be more than likely who I would support today.
Yeah, I feel like I would probably say the same thing, but my argument would be that I know Bernie had policies that most people agreed with, but they didn't get enough exposure, and I feel like it might be the same issue with Andrew Yang.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to have Andrew Yang back on, and I'm going to, at least at this stage, do what I can to say this is someone who is a really great candidate and has a lot of the right ideas. So I'm going to try to be a part of the solution and not the problem there.
Yeah, and one last quick question.
Sure.
So what is your stance on a 6-hour workday? Because I know Sweden had experimented with it in 2 years, and there was, positive feedback from it. And I know you were talking about reworking the work ethic in our country. So
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with, 6-hour workday. There have been experiments with 4-day work weeks. All of that stuff, I think, should be on the table for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Again, great fan. Yeah, keep it up.
All right, thanks. Really appreciate the call. I'll take a couple more calls, but let me get to these couple of super chats. Saridi Ahmed Yahia wrote back saying, I do believe in Israel's right to exist for Jewish people because they were persecuted for hundreds of years, but like the land they live in right now, at some point belonged to someone else. Yeah, I mean, that applies to most countries, and I don't know where that necessarily gets us. But you're right. A lot of countries now exist on land that at some point was someone else's. Roy Earl says, David, did you hear that Dave Rubin praised Jair Bolsonaro? I did. Also, can you expand upon the story about your meeting with Alex Jones at that conference? Yeah, so I'll tell this story again because it's been a while since I told it. I met Alex Jones in person one time. I'm sure he doesn't remember it. It was at a talk radio conference about 10 years ago called Talkers New Media Seminar in New York City. And Alex Jones gave a speech. He got like the Freedom of Speech Award or something. And then after that, he apparently knew, we had some friends in common there. There's these libertarian guys who used to have a show, they may still, although I'm not sure, like a libertarian show called Free Talk Live, Ian Freeman and Mark Edge. And I guess Ian and Mark knew Alex. So I was sort of talking to Mark and Ian, and Alex Jones came over at kind of the same time. And what suggested to me that he was playing a character was he kind of said in a way that was kind of like an, insiders club thing, I could have really freaked him out up there, but I decided not to. Sort of like what he does is a character of different degrees of wacky. But it was very brief. And his wife, who I've interviewed, or ex-wife, I guess, or soon to be ex-wife, told me it's not at all a character. So I don't know. I mean, it was a very brief conversation. And I don't know how much we can really deduce from it other than, he sort of intimated that he dials it up or tones it down depending on what's going on. Art Flores says, if you were one of Trump's lawyers and help win the case against obstruction of justice, would you feel personally wrong or would it be your greatest accomplishment? I am so far from being the right person to answer that question. I am simply not, I couldn't even imagine of being one of Donald Trump's lawyers. Let me take a couple more calls and then I got to run. Let's go to the 512 area code. 512, go ahead.
Would that be me?
That is indeed you.
Okay, wow. Okay, so I know you're probably tired of hearing about this subject, but I thought maybe I could add something to it.
Which subject?
The subject of race and IQ.
Oh God, okay.
Yeah, that one. Well, I was thinking that maybe the racist element of that subject matter and the part of it that makes people so uncomfortable is not the idea itself that certain races have lower IQs, but sort of the implied threat of what would happen to them if they did and how the right would use that. Like, I think that's the real
Well, there's an
problem, if that
intermediate
makes any
step I
sense.
think that you're skipping, which is it's not so much that different races do differently well on one test that exists, but the idea that number one, it's a good indicator of all types of intelligence. And more importantly, number two, that it's linked inherently to the race of the people, right? So here, and this is the example that I find to be the most illustrative here. Um, the race and IQ people like to talk about Asian people, but they also like to talk about Ashkenazi Jews, right? Ashkenazi Jews, great IQ, all this, okay, whatever. Um, the basic IQ test is very closely correlated with verbal abilities. And we had a situation on planet Earth where for hundreds of years, you had Ashkenazi Jews who were literally not allowed to hold many jobs and ended up in circumstances where one of the things that they could do, no one could really stop them from doing this, or they tried, but they didn't succeed, was they would sit around and read and study, often religious texts, but also other things, rhetoric and debating and all this type of stuff. And on the other hand, you had Black Americans who, for a long period of time, would be killed if they read books or even tried to learn how to read.
Yeah.
Imagine for a second if you took 200 years and reversed it and you made it so that it was illegal for Jews to read, but all Black Americans did was sit around reading books and learning rhetoric and debate and all of this sort of stuff. Does anyone really
Right.
think that the IQ tests would come out the same way? I mean, really,
Well,
can
okay,
anybody say that?
I'll tell you, I've looked at it, and see, I had a lot of trouble with this issue for a long time, and I really did not want there to be a correlation. And I just feel like if that were really all that it was, that the statistics would still be a little different, and wealthy Black Americans would do better on the tests. But once again, that's just my opinion. I mean, I watched your video about it, and that's just my opinion right now. But once again, I think this kind of, it goes along with stuff about critiques of capitalism and stuff. Like, why do we live in the 21st century when we could, we have this much money and we can help people and we could even potentially have universal basic income? Why would that even matter if there was like a phenotype, like skin color, that correlated with something like IQ? Like, why are people so afraid of that? I don't think we should live in a country where they feel like there will be a punishment or they have to be afraid of performing a certain way in one aspect and performing another way in one aspect.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you, but it sounds like you're saying you think there is something inherent to race and IQ.
Well, I don't think I understand that the concept of race is. I mean, what does that even mean, race and IQ? Like, I mean, I think there's a little. I just feel like there's a little something to. I don't know, but I just don't understand. Yeah, that was my main point about it. I'm still like trying to discover the issue and looking at it different ways and stuff. I'm not sure how I believe about.
Can
the
I ask you
truth of
something?
it.
How did this issue become so important to you?
I am actually, I don't know what the term is, biracial. I'm 1/4 African American.
Mm-hmm.
That's how.
So because you're 1/4 African American, you became very interested in race and IQ.
Yes, at a certain point.
Okay. All right, sounds
Yeah.
good. I appreciate the call. I don't think I have too much else to say about it. I think it's become a very boring topic, quite frankly, to me. Okay, let's go to the 209 area code. And 209, just hang with me for a second here. I do have a $10 super chat from Saridi Ahmed Yahia, who says, "Consider this my contribution. I'm not a member. Keep up the good work. Thank you. For the $30 you've sent in tonight, you could have yourself a nice little membership and all the benefits that go with it." And Roy Earl says, "David, whatever happened to one of your co-hosts, Rachel? She ended up taking a job that was more closely correlated with her field like 2 years ago or a year and a half or something like that. Still in touch with her and she's doing great." 209 area code. Go ahead.
Oh, hola, David.
Hey, how's it going?
Big fan of the show. So my question regards, so usually the conservative answer to problems regarding poverty tend to be, oh, get a job or work harder,
okay,
or clean your room, something like that, right? So basically the, answer to a problem is to not have that problem, as opposed to actually offering a solution.
Okay.
And my question is there a way to move that conversation forward? Because I don't really see it.
Listen, if someone's committed to just harping, I mean, so, okay, you're talking about how to engage with people who hold certain views. You have to distinguish between someone who holds that view because they believe they've been reasoned into it and are willing to hear reason as a way to get out of it, or if you're just dealing with ideologues who are irrationally married to certain talking points. If it's the latter, I don't
Hmm.
think there's anything you can really say. If it's the former, you can start it with a Socratic method of questioning. With what you're talking about, I think there would be a lot to starting to say, in the United States, if you're born rich, you're very likely to remain rich. And if you're born poor, you're very likely to remain poor. What do you attribute that to? And then sometimes they'll talk about, NBA basketball players or actors or something like that. And then you've got to bring them back to reality
Right.
and tell them that's anecdotal for the most part, that, there's low mobility. Is your argument that poor people give birth to more poor people who are all lazy and that's why they're poor, and rich people give birth to go-getters who also stay rich, and it's a meritocracy, and it's very, very hard to defend that, and that can sometimes cause like an initial crack that then you can use to kind of get into more detail. But again, if people are committed to some of these ideas, you're not going to be able to reason them out of it.
All right. I see. Okay, well, I'll let you go get dinner, eat a Spanish tortilla, and thanks for answering the question.
No
All right,
Spanish
bye.
tortilla tonight. I think tonight I'm making miso glazed salmon, but I'll keep you posted on that Spanish tortilla recipe.
Yes, post a video, please, like the Spanish tortilla.
Yeah. No, I know the video. It's a doozy, I'll tell you. Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to a caller from the 617 area code because it could be a local caller here from Boston. What's going on? 617, that's you.
This is Matan. I live locally in Newton. I was wondering if you think that there's going to be a
You sound like you're
moderate.
underwater. Can you get above water or maybe do something so I can hear you better?
Sorry. I was wondering if you think there's going to be a more reasonable Republican like Kasich that would challenge Trump in the primary.
Oh, yeah, I think there will be a primary challenger to Trump, and I think they will be more reasonable, but I don't really think they're going to stand much of a shot.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very quick call. That was an easy one. Okay, let's go to the 917 area code. Caller from 917, go ahead.
Hello, is this me?
That is you.
Oh, cool. I'm wondering when do you think the shutdown will end and how it will end?
It will end on March 3rd.
I mean, rather in like terms of like next month, next week.
Yeah, March 3rd.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's quite blunt. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. I have no idea. I really don't. I think this thing could go on for, I think it could easily go on another month. Whoa, I threw my Sharpie. I apologize. I think it could easily go on another month. And I don't know ultimately what it will take to end it. I don't know which side is going to blink first. It's like a game of chicken. I have no idea.
All right, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Very good. He seemed just as satisfied with my real answer as to the fake one. Okay, I've got to run. Thanks to everybody who joined me today. Become members. Be good people who support independent media. You will have your name set on the show, and it's all going to be fantastic. And we will take calls again, and we'll do more streams in the future.